From deep inside the Truckin Broadcasting Studio, located in Truckin City headquarters, where opinions fly faster than Maverick's F-18 and myths fold like a house of cards. Get ready for the most unique live show challenging you to believe what you see and learn something new every day. Featuring the El Rushbo of Truckin' News, Mr. Attitude himself, your host, Deviator.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Never a dull moment in show business, I'll tell you. Technical difficulties every single week. One of these days, I'm going to get past that, and I'm actually going to start a smooth show. Welcome aboard, everybody. We are on our war to Main Street Mafia, day number 21. I'm counting down the days, weeks, and everything involved, and we are making a difference. Our mission here is to make a difference. We are here to make trucking great again. We do this one news video at a time. Welcome aboard to everyone joining us. We are talking today about independent contractors and overtime pay as it relates to the trucking industry. We are also joined by a number of guests. We'll be taking calls, and yes, we will be running late because we started late. As they say in the sewer business, stuff happens. Let's talk shop first. If you're joining us for the first time, take a moment, go down below, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, follow us. I'm pumping out content and these lives every single week. Day number 21 and counting. Every day is a new day. If you're joining us with Facebook, take also a moment, go down below. Notice that there are stars activated under all my lives, reels, and videos. Please take a moment, contribute to the cause. Maybe someday I can buy enough equipment to get rid of the technical difficulties I keep having every week. God bless it. I'm joined by others in the trucking industry that feel just as passionate and obviously have a lot to contribute. But first, let me start by saying, put the press on notice. At the risk of sounding like a friend of mine, truckers are people too. We deserve equal time.
If the powers that be want to help and want to do any good for the truckers in this country, stop baiting us with these piddly-ass articles and start telling the Main Street press about things that actually make a difference and let us decide.
Where are the Chris Cuomos? Where are the Anderson Coopers? Where are the Rachel Maddows? Main Street, silent. Which is entirely 90% of the reason I started this channel. I have it in for Main Street, especially when they keep coming back week after week with all this BS about there being a shortage. And now when it comes to talking about the independent contractor rule, they're silent. We haven't seen nothing out of CNN, MSNBC, or any of the Main Street Mafia. And that's the name I've given them. But host of Driving with John himself is with us today. God bless it, my friend. I thank you for joining us. Talking about truckers are people too. He's the man that coined that phrase. Welcome aboard, John.
You took my joke away from me. That's not even fair. Thank you. I love being on. If anybody's coming over from my channel, I'm having technical difficulties. Enjoy it here. So, and make sure you subscribe to this channel also.
Yeah, welcome indeed. Anyway, now also going to join us. Look at me getting my words all screwed up. Also joining us is a man that's been known to make trucking grumpy again, of Facebook fame, good old Frank from Grumpy Old Truckers. How are we doing there, Frank?
Just refer to me as the Grump. And by the way, I have my shirt on this week. No one stole it. And I'm feeling great since I've gotten out of that blooming hospital.
Yes, we're glad you're here. Extremely glad.
I thought about going shirtless just to honor Frank, but I decided not to.
Well, that was last week's episode, not this week's.
There you go. Yeah. I think we lost a guest. We had another guest up, but I think he's having internet problems. So, Poet, if you can see the broadcast, if you want to try joining us, if your internet cooperates, we'll certainly welcome the friend from the north. But you know what? Canadian truckers are just as much people as American truckers too. So we welcome you if you decide to join us. We tried starting and realized a technical error, so I won't go into detail about that. So we're on run number 2 for this. Anyway, yeah, the whole business of independent contractors, that's been bantered about now, I think, for about 3 or 4 weeks. Recently caught a couple of ads or articles, actually, that caught my attention. And I'm frequenting a lot of different podcasts from different truckers in the groups, and I'm intrigued by some people's willingness to go public with the cause of fighting this independent contractor rule. And one in particular caught my interest, and he's got a podcast of his own. You're going to know who he is as soon as I play him.
My own schedule. I love working for people I choose to work for. And I love the freedom that comes from being my own boss. And I'm not alone. Nearly 70 million people in this country work the same way.
This man is very passionate, apparently, about our cause. So much so that he's decided to take on an entire episode of his own talking about independent contractors. Now, his show is a podcast he does every week. And if I can find it, I will leave the link to his podcast in the description of this show. I love the man's show. I love the man's premise. And he is dead on everything he says. And we'll cover more of that here very soon about independent contractors and exactly what's at stake. And it leads into one of the things I also want to cover on today's show. And there's our friend from the north. He's having, again, issues and difficulties. But we welcome you nonetheless. How are you doing, Poet? I think I'll give him a second or so. But his internet is apparently very, there you go. His internet is very slow, but we are doing excellent. Yes, we can. There is a huge delay and great visual effects behind you there, John. I like that. Hey,
interesting. I want to learn how to do that.
Yeah, I don't know enough about the technology to get all that technical. So,
me neither. Just put 2 thumbs up. It did it on its own.
Do I have?
I like his. Yeah. I like his.
Do I have to go back to the YouTube channel?
That would probably help because I think there's a 10-second delay if you're on YouTube. I don't know about Facebook. I do not know about the delay on Facebook. So don't ask me that. I do know there's a 10-second delay on YouTube if you're following. So if when I put up the studio lines, if you call in to be part of the show, and I'll put up a reminder before I do this, please turn down your player. It will play games with you. So if you call in on our studio line to be part of the show, please turn off the player down, at least sound-wise. But that may be the problem you're having, Poet. Anyway, you're spelling MainStreet wrong. I purposely put MainStreet Mafia. I purposely put MainStreet Mafia for a reason. And that reason is basically this. They are a mafia. They are an organization. They are tantamount, in my eyes, to criminal organizations, just like the mafia. They take only the stories that interest them, that interest their donors, that interest the people that pay their way, nothing more. And that is why I call them that. And that is why I have my personal belief on going against Main Street, because 9 times out of 10, the facts and the BS they put in are old, they're dictated, and they're told by others in the industry that have a dog in the fight. And the last people that benefit are us. So anyway, on to the purpose of today's show, which is giving you guys the voice. We are dealing with daily news stories coming out, strangely enough, from just main players, freight waves. Talk about the trucker. Talk about, I've got a number of articles up here about the ATA's stance on trucking. Louisiana truckers sue over independent contractor rule. And by the way, all these stories that I reference will all be in the description underneath this live when we get done. But it's very interesting, to say the least, what is out there in all of the small media player arenas. If you're a small time, I say small time, Freight Waves isn't small time, Landline isn't small time, but they're not mainstream media. They're not CNN, MSNBC. That is where I think this needs to reside. You know, every time you strike or go boycott New York City, it's all over every Main Street network. But something like this, dead silent. We aren't hearing anything. So let me give you a laydown on what I think personally I believe is the main cause and culprit behind why they're pushing independent contractors the way they are. As soon as I can get it to play. Hang on a second.
The folks who backed AB 5, particularly the Teamsters Union, what they really wanted was a one-size-fits-all kind of situation where all these freelance people were herded out of their independent little shops, if you will, and into large employers where they would be more easily organizing targets for unions.
And that right there is what it comes down to. We are fighting unions on this. We're fighting big trucking. We're fighting entities that are bigger than us. You know, when it comes down to whether or not you can be an independent contractor, I think that is the war we're fighting. If you were going to ask a question, Albert, I'll let you ask it. At the risk of having dead air, what do you think about, John, when it comes down to being an independent contractor versus being an employee? What do you think is the difference? And what do you think it would mean for you personally if you had to make a decision as to whether or not you were one versus the other?
Well, I've made that decision. I've actually been an owner-operator. I've also been a company guy. I think from the perspective of the driver themselves, it depends on your personal thing. As a company driver, you're in control of less, but you also have less stuff looming over your head. But as an owner-operator, I feel like when I was an owner-operator, you're being attacked as an owner-operator. A lot of the larger carriers will do whatever they can to make sure that they get the freight over you. I saw a statistic recently that something like 90-some%, a high percent, like 95, 96% of trucking are smaller trucking companies. So these large companies are only a small percentage, but they control most of the trucking legislation over a whole.
Yeah, it's true. Very
because
true.
we can't seem to get together as owner operators or company drivers. We can't seem to get together to actually overpower, even though we have more power than they do. We just can't organize well enough to do it.
Yeah. Well, strangely enough, I mean, when it comes down to people fighting for or against, it seems like the larger entities are exactly backward from the way they typically usually are. Chris Spears recently came out and said, and pardon me while I flip over to an article, recently came out and said that, let me see here, I had it just in front of me a minute ago. ATA President Chris Spears said it would reduce drivers' paychecks and disseminate, I don't know what, it's being paraphrased here, but it would upend trucking jobs and pay models that for 85 years have provided family-sustaining wages while growing the U.S. supply chain. So he's actually taking a supportive position on not allowing this independent contractor rule to go through. Now, normally, Chris Spears, being the executive of ATA, normally fights for the big companies. On this, he's taking the opposite stance. And weirdly enough, Todd Spencer's on the other side. Todd Spencer, the leader of the OOIDA, he seems to feel like it would help. I can't figure this out. Everybody's backwards. I mean, think about it. The average driver nowadays, I'm saying average because I don't mean everybody. Everybody watching, they're all different and everybody's thinking. The average driver, we all start somewhere. We all start as rookies. We all start driving for somebody. We all generally start with that employee-based model. But eventually, if we're all like everybody on this panel today, we eventually start out being on our own, independent. Either we have our own authority or we work for somebody else as an independent contractor. Just think back, Frank, all of the jobs you've had in your 23, 24 years, how many of them have actually been independent versus employee? How would it affect you?
Well, I'd say about half of what I've worked for has been like that. Just had a few independent contractors with them. Now, that's one of the things, like John was mentioning, is it's kind of a touch and go deal on that because they're trying to phase out the independent guy totally. You either got to join up. The old saying, if you can't beat them, join them. Well, that's kind of what it's coming to. Is you more or less have to join in and contract under that company because they don't want the small guy working out there anymore. They want you to be a part of a big company. And right. The question is why? Why do they want to do this? Is it a control thing, or is it just they just don't care enough to want to have somebody doing their own stuff and being under their own authority? That's my question on that. I have never actually found an answer directly on that.
Right. Yeah, I feel the kind of same way. But one of the articles I was reading, I pulled out a comment, and there's somebody actually on our live today that kind of has a similar outlook. I'll get to in a minute. But this particular comment on one of the articles I was reading, a guy underneath the article, mind you, and this is not part of our live. A guy says he lives in Amarillo and has been trucking for about 30 years. And he says, all these carriers are the same. They get cheap pay, high dollar benefits, and it's what they offer us. I think we should make $50 an hour for every logged hour and $75 an hour for all hours over 40. He says it's BS. He doesn't like it. And you know what? I for one, I feel the same way. I don't like it either. But you know what? It is what it is. I think for 85 years, as was pointed out in an earlier article, we have a system that works. And I said in an earlier video, it's not a perfect system, but it works. Yeah, it needs tweaking. And yeah, it could use some work. But you know what? I don't think it's just simply lay down and take it. 7C says, can we just agree that there will always be issues in trucking? And as long as each of us are profitable, ethical, we'll be fine. Yes, I agree to the extent that, yes, we'll be fine. But And here's where I differ from you, my friend. I think when it comes to making trucking politically correct, I think we're going in the wrong direction. I think that experiment has been tried and failed, even so far north as Canada. Now, assuming that the delay doesn't catch us on this question, Poet, what do you think the Canadian government has in their arsenal for independent contractors versus overtime pay? What do you think is going on up there? Oh, just as I asked the question, he drops. I think where I was going with that was I think they've already tried and failed. Their trucking authority basically had to deal with protests and convoys and all that. And they're no different than us. They try organizing, they try getting something figured out, and then just chaotically, for whatever reason, they can't get enough people behind them to make a difference, or actually get enough momentum behind it, and then it loses steam. I mean, their convoy and everything started out great. I mean, there was huge numbers, but it backfired on them real fast. But
or did it?
Oh, it's back.
Well, yeah, I put him back on because I'm hoping he's got some insight to this. I mean, in terms of media and in terms of the independent contractor, do you hear a lot about it? A lot about that argument up there in Canada, Poet?
We do. We don't call it Main Street Mafia. We call it lame stream news.
Okay.
Okay.
I like that. In terms of the independent contractor,
go ahead.
Well, there's a delay again. I'm trying to be patient with. In terms of the independent contractor argument that we are currently talking about, and the way your government looks at things, or the trucking industry or authority up there in Canada, how do they see things in terms of being an independent contractor up there?
So you are talking independent contractor.
Yes.
In the States.
Up there in Canada.
In Canada, we call them, and they are trying to get rid of. They are trying to get rid of the Driver Inc. Incorporated model of doing things. In other words, as an independent driver working for a company, I can no longer say, hey, I want to pay my own tax. I want to pay my own workman's compensation. I want to be able to get deductions from my income tax because I'm an independent contractor. And the federal government, grabberment, is trying to get rid of us.
That's a shame. That's a shame. That's a downright shame. Well, my friends, you're not the only one in that fight, and we are fighting
you
the
guys
good fight
are going
here.
through.
We are fighting that good fight down here. Just so that you know, Poet, the delay that you have is significant. So trust me, I'm going to bear with you. And also, I'm going to try playing one more spot, because we're going to open the studio lines here in just a few moments, and we're going to try taking some calls if we're able to do so. So bear with me just a moment, folks.
Exactly. Look at what happened. Look at what happened in California.
We're talking about millions of freelancers no longer free.
So if I live in, Texas or Tennessee or Michigan, Wisconsin, you name it, if I live anywhere else in the U.S. and I look at this, I would be very afraid.
All right. I'm trying to deal with technical difficulties of my own here, so bear with me.
I was going to say, that was quite interesting.
Yeah, well, that was a short spot. I had scripted in differently, but I figured I'd get through it because really, the next clip or the next part of this clip that I'm talking about is really the crux of the freedom and flexibility, and that's what it goes to. It goes to the freedom and flexibility of exactly what it is we're dealing with, what's at stake. Because think about it, the typical 9-to-5 job that you deal with on an everyday basis is employee based. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You get into a job because you want the freedom and flexibility of setting your own schedule, your own hours. You want basic control over the direction you take your career, your life, and your livelihood. Now, think about it. Now, if everybody in trucking suddenly was told you can't do what you're used to and you have no choice but to be an employee, think about what that would do to the industry. John, what would that do to you? I mean, right now, currently, the way you work your business, explain to us a little bit about how that would affect you personally.
Well, let's be honest. Right now, I'm not running my own business. I'm a company driver because of the difficulties I went through over the last couple of years, which if you don't know about, you'd have to watch my channel and find out more. But what I will tell you to answer the question Frank asked earlier, and if you want to find out why all this is happening, and it goes from top to bottom, follow the money. It's always about the money. If you want to know why companies do the things they do, if you want to know why the government does what they do, it's always about the money. So just follow the money and you'll come up to what you're looking for.
That makes sense.
Exactly. I fully believe that. You currently, Frank, are in between jobs.
Yeah.
But if you actually had the perfect job in front of you, and we're told that perfect job had the great pay, had the great benefits, had a great opportunity, worked for you, and you started working it, and then suddenly this passed, and you couldn't have that job, how would you feel? What would be going through your mind if all of a sudden what was perfect is now no longer in reach?
Well, to be honest with you, that's kind of similar to what happened with me, except for it didn't involve government. I mean, I'd be a little upset, and it was going to hurt me financially, and it's going to hurt me, with trying to hurry up and try to find somewhere else to work.
Without naming names, Frank, I know there's a sensitivity about all this. Without naming names, all right, tell us briefly what happened with your situation and why that matters.
Well, basically, I mean, when I first began with my last company, I was told, that I could take my tractor home and leave my trailer at a safe spot that, wouldn't be broken into or would be watched. So I was doing that for pretty much for 4 months when I was with this company. Things worked great. And then one day I happened to get a call because my dispatcher says, hey, we need the seal number and all this off that trailer because since they switched the load over onto it, they need all that information. I'm like, okay, well, give me time. I've got to go up to the trailer. And she's like, what do you mean you got to go up to the trailer? I said, well, my truck's here, which is always the way it's always been. And my trailer's uptown in a safe spot that I keep it at where we can drop our trailers at. And she said, oh, no, you can't do this. And so basically I said, well, what do you want me to do? I said, I can't bring the truck and trailer to my place. It's too small. There's no place to back it in or turn around or anything. And she said, well, the owner has decided that we are not to disconnect from the trailers unless they're dropping it at a drop lot or something like that. I was like, okay. I said, when I first began with y'all, that was not a problem. I said, because I asked and inquired about it, and they said that would be fine. And she said, well, the owner is now enforcing it. So if it doesn't work, then I guess we'll have to figure something else out differently. And I'm like, well, what do you mean differently? She said, well, can you Uber to it? I'm like, no, we don't have Uber available in my town. I live in too small of a town. Well, do you think you can get a ride? I said, well, I mean, it's possible, but my people I get rides from, you know, they have their own hours. So it's not like I can call them at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, I need to go to my truck, you know?
Right.
So it kind of left me in a hard spot. So I chose to go ahead and take their equipment back to them, which is proper. Because if you abandon it and say, come get it yourself, well, that doesn't look good on your background check. Yeah. So anyhow, I done that. I came back home, and then of course, shortly after that's whenever I started having all the health problems. So in a way, you might say that kind of worked out in my favor, because if I would have had all these health problems while still driving with them, it could have ended in a bad thing.
Yeah. 860-785-3547. 860-785-3547. We are talking today about independent contractor rule, the law that they're considering, and overtime pay. If you have something to add, would like to chime in, have your voice be heard, we're going to welcome you to call that line and sound off on what you think needs to happen. Also, joining the conversation is the last part of the clip that I had, which basically goes to the rest of the story we're talking about here. So let me play that for us and hear his opinion here. Come on.
Now, he's fighting against the PRO Act to protect his lifestyle.
My wife got a really bad case of bronchitis. If I'm an employee driver and I decide I'm going to stay home for a week and take care of my wife, what's my employer going to do? My employer's going to say,
nothing good.
Tom, I can't leave that truck sitting still for a week. They'll probably fire me. As an independent contractor, I can just tell dispatch, I'm going to be gone for a week. I'll let you know when I'm ready to go again.
That's the flexibility we talked about before, and it vanishes in every state if it gets caught up in the slipstream of the PRO Act.
That's the full context of that. I hate internet issues when it comes around.
I think you're having a little internet issue.
Yeah, it's not the processor because I got a fast enough one, but that basically goes to the argument that I was making earlier, and that, you know, I myself, I mean, you guys have told your story. I mean, you know, I myself, I've had my share of experiences. Okay, just so those that don't know are aware of my background. I started out as an employee. I was working with Warner, of all companies. I worked with them for a couple of years, and I was given a mileage rate and told, okay, as long as you go ahead and do your thing, you'll be fine. Well, I don't necessarily always like doing the same thing every day. So I eventually decided, you know what, I want to do my own thing. And because I had a growing family at the time, you know, I just had my first son. You know, my two older kids were grown, but we just basically had 2 babies. And I didn't want to be limited to the paycheck with the 50 cent a mile thing. And I didn't like it. So I decided to become an owner operator. And I bought my own truck. And I went out on my own. And one of the biggest benefits I saw from doing that very thing was the ability to set my own schedule. I made good money. But if, God forbid, my wife needed to go to a doctor's appointment and needed me home, you know, if I'm out on a month's tour or month's run, I can't suddenly stop what I'm doing working for Warner to do that. I played all kinds of games with fleet managers just trying to get home, and it created more problems than I care to tell you. So, you know, that clip that I just played, that goes to perfectly displaying
what I think is going through the mind of 90% of the business owners out there that are independent and do their own thing. I mean, let's be clear. We're talking about independent contractors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those independent contractors are working with us, and they are part of the they're part of the system, if you will, of just independent business owners. But they're not the only thing affected by the overtime pay argument. Okay. The overtime pay argument would affect everyone. The independent contractor part of the argument would affect the entire industry. So, you know, there are those people that are not, quote, independent contractors. They're just independent business owners. Let's think about them. They have their own truck. They have,
I have a backstory that applies to this exactly, actually.
Oh, well, go ahead and share, because I mean, I was going to go somewhere with that. I mean, go right ahead.
Yeah. Well, it kind of struck a chord, I'm just saying, because this actually happened to me. When I was an owner operator, my wife came down with a uncurable sickness, and we didn't know what it was. At first, we thought it was cancer. So it was about 3 years ago. I ended up working about 6 months out of the year. That was only, and didn't lose my job. You know, I went to work when I had to, that kind of stuff. But we could make all the appointments, and I could spend the time I needed with my wife when she was sick, and still have employment. You can't do that as a company driver. So, like, and also if you're like a CEO of a company, not even in trucking, no matter if you run the company and you want to take a couple weeks off, you can. You just know that, you know, if you're a one guy show, you're not making any income, but family is more important than anything else anyway. So for me personally, that story struck a chord for me, because I actually went through that. I love my wife very much, and it was a very hard thing to go through. And over a year straight, pretty much appointments every other week, some of them spending weeks at a time.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Wayne Yesel says, I'll never work for a company ever again. Can't live on 45 cents an hour. Hell, I started out at 25 cents. He says, I'll only do owner operator. And I think that anybody that's been in trucking any length of time probably has that same outlook and that same thought. You know, I mean, let's talk about our friend of the North, Poet. He's on our studio line right now, and he probably feels the same way. Out of all the years that you worked in the trucking industry, Poet, how many of them would you say you've worked as a owner or a, you know, somebody other than an employee? Hang on one second. Hang on.
Yep.
All right. Now I think I can hear you now. Try again.
So I was a lease operator when I was 21.
Okay.
That lasted about 11 months before I went broke, but I had help going broke by way of my ex-wife. Never mind that stuff. Okay? I have been an independent contractor on 3 occasions, or as we call it up here, Driver Inc. And right now, because I turned 70 last month, the perfect job that I have had, they're trying to push me out the door. Well, you can't chain up anymore. Oh, you can't tarp anymore. Oh, I got five different reasons why they're trying to push me out the door, and I refuse to let them.
You guys hear this okay?
Yeah, I hear it great.
Yeah,
I'm just like a 70-year-old. I'm saying a 70-year-old throwing tarps. My respect for that guy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I like the idea already. I mean, just that idea. But I mean, if years ago, Poet, you were told you could no longer be Driver Inc. If years ago you were told you could only do it as a means of maybe getting a W-2, or I don't know how they do it in Canada, how would that have affected you? I mean, what would you thought?
I would have told them straight and simple. And I'm not mincing words.
You would have told them to pound salt, huh?
Yeah. Truckload.
I like that too. All right. Anyway, hold on, Poet. Hold on just a moment. Because what I want to do is I want to look, make sure everything's working right here.
I've got to update my little background icon when I go off camera.
Yeah.
It's still old fashioned.
I had a weird message come up, and that was because of my old assets. I got rid of a couple, so I thought I had a problem, but anyway. So I mean, in terms of the independent contractors,
your W, okay, it's the same thing as our T4.
Okay.
So, same thing, just information.
Yeah. And just as the refresher.
However, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask, just as a refresher, how many years have you been in the trucking industry?
4 years, 1 month, and 1 month and 5 days.
The fact that you can call that to exactly the day, God bless you, my friend. I can't remember the exact days of nothing, much less. I mean, I know I've been in trucking 13 years, but you have it down to the day. Oh my God.
He's special. He can throw tarps at 70 and have a memory like solid.
I can probably tell you the hour too. I went and got my beginner's permit on my 16th birthday in the morning.
Did he say 15th?
In the afternoon, 16th. I came back in and went for my driver's test.
Wow.
And the woman says, well, you were just here this morning. I said, yes. Well, you just got your beginners. I said, I'm ready for my driver's. Oh, okay.
Those days don't exist anymore. You can't do that. You can't do that today.
No.
No. You think?
Well, I'll tell you. God bless you. You know, I mean, I'm the same thinking as John right now. If at the age of 70 you can still throw chains and tarps, you are doing something, my friend. God bless you.
Deviator. The thing is that I did so well on my driver's test that the examiner gave me a chauffeur's license, which was the same thing as a Class 1. And on top of that, he gave me my motorcycle license. And I had been driving motorcycles for 5 years before that. I used to steal my brother's Harley Davidson when he was in high school.
Wow.
So I got my license the hard way. Now, I told you that I got taught with a yardstick when it comes to semis.
Yes. Right? Yes. And if you guys are interested in background on that, check out my first live where this man was on the live. It's an entertaining story. I urge you to go look at it.
But basically, Poet was grandfathered in on everything.
Yes,
So,
he was.
right now, okay, because I turned 70 last month, the upper management in my company is trying to push me out the door.
Well, and that's a shame.
You
Honestly,
can no longer.
The companies today don't have the same loyalty. The companies today don't have the same loyalty to a good, hardworking individual that they used to back in the day. That is now I want to say it's a lesser event. It's not a very common thing nowadays, but workers like yourself and people like us, we're not made the same anymore.
It's still common. It's called age discrimination.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And people just don't like admitting it. So, look, I've got a few interesting things to take care of to complete and round out this show. Albers, that was interesting. I certainly thank you for your contribution to my show. You are welcomed every week and every day if I'm alive. I certainly welcome your input. You are one lucky, well-educated man, and I thank you for your input today.
Oh, I'm not well educated. I just know what the hell I'm doing.
Well, the same thing in my book. God bless you. I'm going to hang up with you so we can get to other callers and get to other business. I certainly thank you for your contribution today.
Okay.
God bless. God bless.
Grumpy, you'll have a great day, and we'll catch you on the flip.
I appreciate you.
See you,
God bless you. Be safe and
Take
keep
care,
it rolling.
Poet.
Come on, phone. Hang up. There we go. All right.
Let's
Technical issues with my phone. God bless it.
It don't work.
But the whole idea worked. God bless it. I like that. Yes.
I know, right?
Hey, technical things do work if you try hard enough. I just got to remember to hit the right buttons anyway. Yeah, but I mean that right there is the crux of it. The government is trying so hard to run. I don't want to go there, but I have no choice. Micromanage every industry. They really are. And I think that is a majority of the problem that exists. And everybody in the industry has their own opinion and they have their own thoughts, but they're too afraid to make too much steam. It's almost like Poet in a sense. He's being pushed out the door, but what kind of choice does he have? I mean, really. You were going to say something, John?
Yeah, let me play devil's advocate for a minute. Trucking said that he's a business owner. He focuses on his business, and he really has no interest in worrying about the uncontrollable things. I'm only doing this because I know he would take that stand. So, what you're saying is that's all things that are outside of control of the business owners themselves, like the the regulations by the government and all that stuff. I do believe, I'm going to take an opposite side of him a little bit. You do need to worry about it because it's going to shape the way that you want to pick your leaders, or decisions you make are based on those regulations. So I understand you don't worry about the uncontrollable, but at the same point, you kind of have to be aware of it and do what you can to affect it.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I think personally, and just this is just me sounding off on my own opinion. Personally, I think the more of us decide to just stay in the background and remain silent over things like, oh, it's just not worth it, or no one will hear me, or, have those defeated thoughts. I don't think it really serves anyone. It certainly don't help you. It certainly doesn't advance your cause or your position any. The whole reason I'm in this YouTube platform doing what I do with videos every day is because I want to make a difference. To simply sit back on the sidelines and say, well, you know what? I don't think it does much good. No, it don't. To do just that. If you sit on the sidelines and don't say nothing, it does nothing. But to actually be proactive and say something and actually make a statement, yeah, that does make a difference. And that's the whole reason I do this. You know, not worrying about the uncontrollable, that's like, oh, in a sense, that's like accepting defeat before it happens. You know, that's why people lose in my eye.
I kind of gotta push back a little bit on that. I think worry is the wrong word. If you're just worrying about it, you're not really doing anything other than stressing yourself out. So in that sense, I think he's correct. But you do have to make yourself aware of it and know what things you can do. He said the uncontrollable, but it is, even the uncontrollable is slightly controllable depending on the choices that you make certain times of the year or every 4 years or whatever, you know. Trying to, you know, not say exactly what I'm trying to say, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between uncontrollable and then there's also, you know, affectable, I think. There's a difference. You know, there are things in this industry I can't control. I cannot control the price of fuel. Okay. I cannot control the fact that I only have 70 hours before I have to start working recap or I'm forced to do a reset. I can't control all the many regulations that are in the FMCSA handbook. Okay. What I can control is how I work within them. The hours I work, the fuel I buy, the loads I get, the rules I follow.
That's what he's saying, I think.
I get that.
Yeah.
But then there are also the uncontrollable factors of what everyone else around you does, you know, which basically leads to what's going on in New York City, what happened in Canada last year, what's actually going on industry wide right now. You know, the more the industry as a whole decides to just stand by and say, oh, I can't control this, or, oh, it's out of my hands, that's when everyone else other than you has say so over your future. And that's what I have trouble with. I mean, yeah, in a sense, I agree with Scott in that, well, yeah, there's so much only you can do with uncontrollable. But that don't mean you just have to sit back and take it. You know, there are things, even with uncontrollables, there are things you can do to affect that. And that's why I'm on this platform. That's why I run this show that I run, the videos I create, is because I want to affect change. And I want to make everybody's day better by A, arming them with information, B, at least entertaining them a little bit along the way, and at least giving them the sense, well, hey, somebody out there is giving me a voice. I mean, that to me says a lot. So before you started your group, Frank, what were your thoughts about uncontrollables in trucking? I mean, come on. I mean, you started one of your more famous rants out with something of an uncontrollable. You know, that first rant that I played on our interview about going through construction sites.
Well, actually, that one there was after I became the grumpy old trucker, but we'll continue with it. Yeah, I mean, that's a very touchy thing, you know, just similar with what's going on with what we're talking about today. You know, people running through construction zones at faster speeds than they should. I mean, it's very dangerous, very unsafe, and it's just no sense in it. But I mean, I get those rants where I want to just bring up things and I want to talk about things, and you know, whether people listen to it or not, you know, it's their deal. But you know, just like yourself, you bring up something and you want to talk about it, and you know, whether they want to watch it or listen to you, that's their choice. But you're there to let them know, you know, there are people that care. There are people that want to discuss this stuff. And that's kind of what I see you doing with your show. Is you're wanting to get it out there and discuss these things and bring it abroad so people
Right.
know about it. And you know, it's one of them touch and go situations. Some people are going to want to listen because they're interested, and some people are going to be like, "Oh, this is boring. Forget it." You know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it really depends.
Yeah.
I'm gonna coin that phrase for Poet. Grabberments. I like that. He says, "I disagree. We're always fighting grabberments." I like that. That's catchy. That is really catchy. I'm gonna say good morning and hello to my daughter who's tuning in and watching us today. I'm glad you're able to make it, however late. I don't know how early you've been on, but it's the first comment you put up here. So yeah, just catching up on the comments. I will say this: I'm in it for the long haul. Okay, it doesn't matter what the story is, and trust me, there are lots of them out there. Okay, we see it all the time. Everybody and anybody that is basically having a trucking channel nowadays, everybody has an opinion, and opinions are like, need I complain? I mean, everybody's is different, and usually only that which you spew doesn't stink. I mean, that's my interpretation, and that's my polite way of putting it. But everybody's opinion is important. So, you know, I want you watching this show to know that your opinion counts. And therefore, what I'm going to start doing is I am going to start something that I am going to call the Truckin City Boneyard. And that is what I'm going to ask is that everybody that has a thought, an opinion, or a news story, if you want it covered, if you want it discussed, then by all means, go ahead, send an email to That's Truckin News. I don't have a Truckin City address yet. Okay. Trying to get this thing to show up right so I can see the entire address here. Hang on one second. Boom, boom. I'm trying to do this right. My backgrounds worked last time I did this. Email That's Truckin News at outlook.com. That's the address. I want you to title every single email that you send with that. Have the term boneyard put on that, and I will take a look at that story, that opinion, and I will be happy to respond. Not only that, if the story is good enough and it deserves airtime, which most of them do, I'd like to highlight that story and give you credit for it. The Truckin City Boneyard is a work in progress. I plan on going places with that, and I'm going to start I'm going to start a service basically where that is the thing every week. Truckin City Boneyard. Because you know what? People watching this show need a voice. And that is what the purpose of this show is, to give you guys a greater voice. I'm glad you guys joined me this week. It's been a great conversation. I don't know what next week's conversation is going to be, but I'm certainly looking forward to it. I'll tell you what, this is a great challenge. I'm glad to be doing it. I love this kind of stuff. I love making waves. I love educating. I love entertaining. So certainly, if you guys are out and about on the internet and you like entertainment, certainly take a moment, go ahead, subscribe to Driving with John, look at his Facebook group. He's a very educated, entertaining man. I give him lots of credit. Educated, yes, you are very smart in your own way. Oh, hush, it's my show. I want you to also take a moment and go ahead to Facebook and give this man all kinds of love. Frank, Grumpy Old Trucker, he is a great man as well. Currently building up the numbers, giving us lots of entertaining posts and lots of people, a lot of entertaining stuff to read. So God bless both of you. Thank you for being on the show today. I am Deviator. I am your host. I am so glad you joined us. Please go down below, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Really consider every day when you're on the road, you know what? We are people. We deserve respect. It's people like us that keep this country rolling. It's the trucks that make the deliveries, but it's the drivers that make the difference. Till next week, God bless, stay safe, and keep a rolling.